Hello, my Juicy co-creators. Lilu here on Big Island in Hawaii on this Juicy Living tour, 12 months tour right now around the US, Canada. But today we're in Hawaii, in beautiful, sunny, gorgeous, luxurious Hawaii. How beautiful is that? I'm here with Alfred, by the way, Alfred Webre. For those of you that don't know Alfred yet, we have already done an interview back in Vancouver at the beginning of the Juicy tour, and now we're meeting here for this Dolphin and Teletransportation conference. It's so good to see you.
Thank you.
In this exotic place.
That's right. We're kind of in the middle of the Lemurian kind of existence in the last cycle here. And I mentioned that because one of the discoveries that I made here and contacts was with an apparently pyramid from the Lemurian era, which has been discovered here on the Big Island, and which will be publishing over the next couple of weeks. And I'll be sending you all of the information. It's with a in connection with a researcher here, but the beings that brought the pyramid to the attention of, and this is as big as the Bosnian pyramid. I mean, it's a very large pyramid from the probably from the prior to 9500 BC. The pre-solar system catastrophe, global pyramidal culture that we had here on Earth, which, as you know, because you were here at the symposium, and we from the Mars Anomaly Research Society, my colleague Andy Bashago and myself, were able to show the visual proof of the pyramidal culture that existed with Earth and Mars as an interplanetary society prior to 9500 BC, about 11,500 years ago. Well, there were interdimensional extraterrestrial craft that were involved in leading this gentleman who's an advanced researcher here on the Big Island in Kona to the discovery of this pyramid, which is a huge pyramid hiding in plain sight. And it's right across from a portal on the ocean where the interdimensional craft come out and make their appearance. So that this is the sort of phenomenon that I described here at my presentation, which is a model that we've put forward in scientific terms, a hypothesis, but really it's becoming more and more of an experience. And that is the dimensional ecology of the multiverse. And that is that we have not only a natural ecology that we can describe here in Hawaii, you know, it's part of the ecology. We see all the different flora and the different trees and flowers and the different insects and birds and animals. It's quite, because it's an island, it's uniquely different. You know, we have the Galapagos Islands are just a little way down in the Pacific, and, you know, something unique here. Well, part of the search that we've taken in exopolitics, exopolitics being the science of relations among intelligent civilizations in the multiverse, is that we live in a dimensional ecology. So that in this dimension, we're now in the time-space dimension in which the principal sort of determiners of the dimension that we're in, are time and space. So we have height and width, and we also exist through time in kind of a linear way inside. But many people inside the dimension are starting to have more and more non-linear experiences, where they'll have dreams that they remember, and then the next day they'll bump into what they dreamt about, or they'll have a deja vu experience, or all sorts of things. Well, that's an indicator of what we call the dimensional ecology. In other words, that we live inside internested dimensions, and right now we are living as humans inside the third dimension. But that's just a transitory experience. That's what the spiritual definition has always said. And we're in the era of the integration of spirituality and science. So now, as a scientific matter, we're beginning to put forward a hypothesis that can be supported with scientific data. And the dimensional ecology includes not only dimensions like this third dimension of time-space, like the fifth dimension, the fifth, sixth, and seventh dimensions, which are more regulated by factors such as light, by factors such as love, all of these with capital L's. We don't think of love as a dimension, but this is apparently a design factor of a dimension, and we can begin to access those dimensions here by using instrumentalities that we have, like our hearts. In certain of the disciplines, the mind is located here and not so much in the brain. The brain is kind of a computer, but the mind and in the etheric body, where the mind is more here in this chakra, so that because they're accessing love, and love is more associated with cosmic love, and that's where true knowledge is, and so that those upper dimensions are more concerned with that type of knowledge than here. We're here with time, and well, you're late for the banking appointment. It's that kind of, that's the sort of experience that we're having here in terms of soul development. Well, in the dimensional ecology, we include data that has been assembled according to the scientific method, which is using laboratory protocols and replicable results. That's the essence of the scientific method, and that results in what we can officially call knowledge, that we all agree upon. And that includes the afterlife, the human afterlife, or the interlife, where we go between lives in a spiritual dimension, where there are also spiritual beings. There are intelligent civilizations in the afterlife. We call them the intelligent civilizations of souls. We're beginning to know, with more than 7,000 cases of regressed soul memories, of what the interlife is like, the process of how souls are created, what happens in the interlife, how the intelligent civilizations of souls are organized, how the souls act between lives, how they progress, how what we can call source or God, scientifically now, we can, according to the scientific method, begin to evolve a definition of God as the collective of all of the souls and all of the spiritual beings, and all of the kind of residual intelligence in the spiritual dimension. We know that, for example, in the spiritual dimension, our individual souls are created as, to use a metaphor, as kind of eggs of light from a sea of light, which is Source or God. So we each have that inside of us. So we're actually holographic fragments of God. And so that totality is God, or Source. And we are involved in creating what I would like to call the exopolitical dimensions of the multiverse. Right now, we're in the third dimension of the exopolitical dimensions of the multiverse. And we in the spiritual dimension create these exopolitical dimensions as sort of venues or arenas where our underlying souls can come and develop themselves. And because the whole purpose is to develop consciousness, and we're on our way toward becoming godlike ourselves, although we're like, just beginners in a certain way now. So what many of the truths that the spiritual hi there. Many of the spiritual truths that we heard over the ages, we're now able to open them up and access them through the scientific approach, and that's through the science of exopolitics.
There's something very fascinating in the symposium that you are one of the speakers of, which is the symposium it's Dolphins and Teletransportation. I found fascinating when you start speaking about the parallel universes, parallel realities, parallel dimensions, all of that. So that gets quite complex then, because it's not just one timeline.
Right.
Can you explain us more about that?
Sure. And this is something that is just coming to light now, because some of the science has been developed as part of the national security state and has been weaponized. So, but fortunately, we have whistleblowers, multiple whistleblowers that are coming forward with this knowledge now out into...
Explain for us, whistleblower.
Yes. A whistleblower, according to the law of evidence, would be an eyewitness who's had personal knowledge of technical developments or, other insider knowledge of state secrets or scientific secrets that were developed as part of secret projects in the part of government, military intelligence, corporate secrets, inside any organization. It could be a church, it could be a secret society. And they come out and they believe that in the public interest, this is knowledge that should be known because it affects the public interest. So they come out and they blow the whistle. And there are more and more laws being passed to protect whistleblower rights, because since it is for the public good that they go public, they put their lives in jeopardy, they put their financial security in jeopardy, they put their social status and their family in jeopardy, so that the whistleblowers some of them break their national security oaths to go public because they see that there's abuses that are going on that are contrary to the public interest.
Can you just, before we go into the parallel universes, let's just stay 1 second and can you name some whistleblowers so that I met few, I guess, this weekend. Yeah. But can you tell us, maybe name a few of them or more?
Yeah, sure. With regard to teleportation and time travel, and with regard to the use of teleportation to establish a U.S. secret base on Mars, and in conjunction with life on Mars, and that is in conjunction with the civilization on Mars, and in conjunction with the surface life on Mars. Life on the surface of Mars is very hazardous, as you learned. There's a great degree of predators on the surface of Mars in terms of animals that are, because Mars did not have a KT event like Earth had, where all the dinosaurs were extincted. There's still a lot of dinosaur/reptilian predators on the surface of Mars, so that the kind of civilian settlement program, which the U.S. government covertly has been establishing since at least the early 1970s through teleportation, is taking place right in the middle of this very hazardous planet. And some of the principal whistleblowers that have come forward include Michael Relfe, R-E-L-F-E, and he is an armed serviceman, a U.S. armed serviceman who spent from 1976 to 1996 as part of the permanent security staff at the U.S. secret base on Mars. Arthur Neumann, a U.S. former U.S. Defense Department scientist who was teleported to the secret base on Mars for project meetings there, at which there have been project meetings not only with humans there, but with other species of extraterrestrials, including the members of the Martian human race. The whistleblowers that I have worked with most extensively, that you met here in Hawaii, Andy Bashago, who was originally a project member of Project Pegasus in late 60s and early 70s that developed quantum access, Tesla-based teleportation and time travel, and then in 1980 to 1983 teleported to Mars on a regular basis as a courier to and from Mars, and also who saw all of the animals there and saw how the base functioned, and who is a research scholar and naturalist who and the president and founder of the Mars Anomaly Research Society, Andrew D. Bashago, who wrote the seminal paper, The Discovery of Life on Mars, which you can get at our website, projectmars.net, which places all of this in a scientific context, like the discovery of animal species by Darwin when he went and cataloged them at the Galapagos Islands and things of this sort. So we at the Mars Anomaly Society have sent all of this to the National Geographic Society with all the new species, even though there's been a secret space program which has had all of these species for over 40 years. We now want, at the constitutional level, outside of a black budget economy, at the constitutional level, to have the various organizations on the earth begin to recognize that we have an inhabited planet in our most neighboring society, we have, and that there are new species of animals. There are a number of species of humanoids there. There are humans living under the surface of Mars. We should have treaties of protection of the Martian ecology. And Mars is what we call, in terms of the dimensional ecology, they're what we call a solar system third dimension intelligent society, intelligent civilization, because they're in this third dimension with us. And so you saw evidence of the Martian civilization this week. You saw the photographs of the animals. You saw the photographs of the humans. You heard the testimony. Laura Magdalene Eisenhower, who's a great-granddaughter of U.S. President Dwight Eisenhower, whom you've interviewed, and you'll be interviewing Andy also. She is a corroborative witness because they attempted to enroll her for the Mars colony, and as is William Brett Stillings, who was a gentleman. Sorry. I was. It was like, I was using it as kind of a lollipop. As was William Brett Stillings. It's kind of soft,
It is very.
As was William Brett Stillings, who from 1980 to 1983 teleported to and from the Mars colony, and in 1980 attended a 3-week seminar in preparation for Mars, as Andy has said, with a number of individuals, including 2 individuals, Barry Soetoro, who then changed his name in 1982 to Barack Obama, who's now the 42nd President of the United States, and Regina Hagen, who is now the director of the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, which is the agency that developed teletransportation and time travel. So this has been major revelations, as I say, in the third dimension.
Yeah, but yes, and this it's actually feels quite surreal to hear all this information and to see those images and hear those testimonials and hear that US has been developing those teletransportation time travel techniques since the 70s or 50s even, through the Tesla teletransportation techniques. And there's been 8 techniques that have been reported so far to teletransport people from planet Earth to Mars and probably other planets, including jump rooms, including the Montauk chair. I mean, tell us a little bit of those techniques and why did they originally develop that, and why do they want to be there on Mars? What is the plan there, too? Where is this all leading to?
Right. Okay. Well, this is kind of the story of the third dimension of our solar system. And there are other levels to the multiverse also. In other words, I just want to mention that briefly. There are hyperdimensional or upper dimensional levels of extraterrestrial, hyperdimensional, interdimensional civilizations that are visiting us as well. There's one count from a whistleblower, Michael Prince, that states that the military intelligence agencies are aware of at least 118 different civilizations that are observing or visiting Earth at this time. And they're not all third-dimensional civilizations like the civilization in Mars. The civilization in Mars, according to some witnesses, has bases here on Earth, in the mountains in New Mexico and in South America. And they have been working with some of the U.S. defense agencies. For example, the Howard Hughes Company there have been witnesses there where Martians have been working with them, and Andy Pishago can tell you about his meeting with 3 Martian astronauts in 1970 in New Jersey in the company of his father, when the 3 Martian astronauts were on a visit to Earth of liaison with the defense technical personnel of the CIA. Now, you asked, where is this leading? And we know where it's leading by asking, where has it come from? Because if we trace it back, Mars and Earth were an interplanetary society prior to 9500 BC, when a fragment of the Vela supernova came into the solar system and crashed into did great damage to the Martian surface ecology, took away a great deal of its atmosphere, denuded its surface, and forced the Martian civilization underground, and left a very fragile ecology on the surface with a predatory, with no vegetation. And that's why primarily the animals that are on the surface are carnivores. They exist by eating each other. And there's similar ecologies here on the Earth, islands where you have a single species of crabs that just eats each other, because that's all that's there on that particular island. And that same fragment of the Vela supernova destroyed the great maritime civilization of Earth at that time that Plato called Atlantis. That was the pyramidal civilization. So the discoveries now that we're making of the pyramids here on Hawaii, the pyramids in Mesoamerica, the pyramids in Egypt, in other parts of the world, China, Europe, are part of a pyramidal society that reflected itself in Mars, where there are large numbers of pyramids as well. So, and the human Martian civilization that lives under the surface of Mars, where they're human like us, but because we've been separated for almost 12,000 years, they're slightly different. Andy's met them, and the men are kind of bald. They're a little bit chunkier and muscular. They speak like this with a little bit up because the voice code, the vocal codes are, because of the atmosphere, is different. The Martian women, I've heard, I haven't met a Martian woman, but I've heard they have bright red hair. I don't know. I mean, these are I've just seen fragments. But they're our cousins. They were like humans that settled there. And all of a sudden, we've been separated for 11,000, 12,000 years. So this represents now the fact that we've developed teleportation, and that we have bases there and they have bases here. It represents our getting back together, the reintegration of a human race that is on Earth and is on Mars. And we're originally one integrated society under one leadership, having a single pyramidal culture. If you go to Mars, and you can go to projectmars.net, and there are more than 60 papers there which you can download, you'll see photographs of sculptures and bas-relief of Egyptian pharaohs. You'll see the sarcophagus at which there's the head of an Egyptian king with the conical crown, the same type of conical crown that Queen Nefertiti has on the Queen Nefertiti statue that was discovered in 1911 here on Earth. What I'm saying is that we have 9500 BC, we have ancient Mars, and we have present Mars. Okay? On ancient Mars, it appears as though Earth and Mars were an interplanetary society, which were ruled probably by the Egyptian pharaohs. You see what I'm saying? And which had a colony and a society on Mars, and which ruled over the Atlantean civilization here. Okay? Then the Vela supernova comes in and destroys the surface ecology of Mars, destroys a lot of the atmosphere. The human Martians go underground for survival. Here, it destroys the maritime civilization called Atlantis, and humans regress on Earth back into, tribes, and we lose all of that knowledge. So now we're building each other back up over these last 11,500 years, and we get to the point where we start visiting each other. And at this, our Earth develops teleportation, and that allows us to go to Mars and establish colonies there. And the Martians, who are a little bit more advanced than us, have developed other forms of transport and have established bases here, secret bases, where they have Martians here. So now we're at the point where we can surface this. So Mars and Earth are coming together for the first time after 11,500 years of separation. That's essentially what is happening.
This is wild. I mean, you really cannot think of in linear terms when you hear all this. It's really something that most of us have not been exposed to. So really appreciate your patience here with me and with us. So tell us about the teletransportation, when this has started, and what are some of the techniques, and where are we at now?
Sure. And this is something that I really should defer to Andy, which he'll be speaking to, because he has experienced all of the 8 different modes. And, from the jump room to the stargates, to the chronovisors. Some are modes of teleportation, and some are modes of time travel. This is, in other words, the basic principle is this. I'll talk about basic principles, and then as to the specific eight techniques, the viewers can go over to the interview with Andrew Bashago, because he's been an eyewitness to each of the 8, and I would like to get it exact with him. But what we've discovered is that we live in a time-space hologram, okay, that we're sharing now, which is composed of multiple timelines. And this is an artifact. This is manufactured. This is manufactured by a higher intelligence entity, okay? Which is what we know. We just said that it was the collection, it was the spiritual dimension, which is the collection of the intelligent civilization of souls and the spiritual beings, and that collectivity known as Source, that all together manufactures all of the different multiple universes of the universe. So we're inside a time-space hologram now, which is manufactured. It's as though we went to the carnival, and we're now inside a carnival ride, and this is a virtual experience. And at the deeper level, each of us are from the intelligent civilization of souls that is based in the spiritual dimension that now has teleported into the exopolitical dimension and into this time-space hologram. Now here, there are a multiplicity of timelines, but there's like a principal timeline, highway timeline that we are on. It's kind of a main highway. Now, there are multiple potential timelines. For example, that may or may not mature as the collective timeline that we all experience. For example, there was one timeline that in 2013, Andy Bashago, as a young boy in the Project Pegasus DARPA project, was asked in a one-time probe in the chronovisor, which is like a crystal-based hologram in which you can tune into future events. And he was asked to go into the future. And he witnessed the U.S. Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C., under 100 feet of brackish water. So, is that a reality or not? Okay, and when he came back and he was debriefing the U.S. Navy intelligence officer, the lieutenant commander, the officer became very agitated and spilled his water and lit up a cigarette. Now, similarly, in March of 2010, Dr. Courtney Brown, who is the head of a remote viewing institute, he's a professor at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, assembled the largest number of military-trained remote viewers to engage in a remote viewing exercise to look at the year 2013 because of global warming. Mm-hmm. And they thought that they were just going to find things like, the beaches, came up 2 or 3 inches, something because of global warming. In fact, what they found was a very significant finding. About 39% of their remote viewers found a catastrophic future in which those remote viewers that were viewing the U.S. Capitol, which is right across from the U.S. Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C., found the U.S. Capitol basically underwater, completely destroyed. They found the city of Sydney, Australia, totally destroyed. The Sydney Opera building, completely destroyed, with survivors straggling out of the city. All vehicles destroyed, all modes of transportation destroyed, planes, trains, no more roads, no more anything, just stragglers. Mm-hmm. In some of the futures that they saw, there were no human survivors. All of the coastline cities were completely destroyed in 2013. But 29% of the remote viewers found that nothing happened at all. It was a perfectly normal future. So you have almost a bifurcation. In other words, 2 separate timelines, or 2 parallel realities, or 2 parallel universes that are existing in 2013. So, how does that integrate with the scientific work of our mutual friend and colleague, Dr. Carl Johan Kalaman, of the intentional universe? That here we have a scientific finding that there may be, in 2013, where you have 39% of the remote viewers are finding the Earth as though it had been hit by or affected by a massive astronomical body. And on the other side, 29% as though nothing had happened, because there's been a split and the actual creation of two separate timelines inside our time-space hologram, of two separate highways. And so that one of the hypotheses that we're exploring is this, Lilu, and it's very significant. It may be that in this time frame, individuals may choose to go forward into a catastrophic future and create that timeline for themselves because that's what they feel they need for their souls. Mm-hmm. You know, to experience more duality and war, and others, and hatred, and, you know, that kind of thing, the other. And other portions of the human race have done with that chapter and are ready to go to another vibration. I don't want to use the word ascend, because even ascend implies a value judgment. But let's just say, you know, future A and future B, you know, and future A will be at a certain vibrational frequency of a timeline, and future B will be at another vibrational frequency of a timeline. And it will be more of a frequency based on a time-space hologram based on values of light and love and unity consciousness. And so we have some preliminary data that suggests that. But we don't know, okay? Mm-hmm. But these are some of the real applications, because we know that this is kind of where exopolitics meets politics, because we know that there is a reality at the political level, sort of, which kind of marries exopolitics. That is, there seems to be a certain class of humans that are committed to ecocide and genocide. You know? They are running Monsanto. They are destroying the ecology. They are creating the false flags like Fukushima. They're putting the radiation out there. You see? And they're trying to create, they're trying to commit genocide. And nothing that you try to persuade them seems to stop them. And there are groups of humans that, you know, have a choice whether they can support that or not. And groups of humans go to the ballot box and they elect that. You know, well, yes. Well, we'll have more war because those peoples are against us, you know? And they're sort of like empowering the dualistic timeline. So, and more people are waking up to the fact that that's an illusion, that war is industrial activity, and that the same parties are manipulating the enemy part, both sides of the war. They're manipulating both, you know, both sides of the war. In order to profit from the middle. And that has consequences at the level of soul. Okay? So, one of the findings that we found is that if you go back to Sumerian times, say, which is when the current religions began to come in, is that prior to that, in other words, exopolitics preceded religions. And that before, we had sort of the advanced civilizations have sort of an exopolitical approach, which is, let's describe what's there. Let's describe the dimensional ecology. Let's describe what the spiritual dimensions are. And then suddenly these religions come in that introduce cosmologies that do not conform with the facts and that are manipulatory. Okay? Where this God is better than that God, and heaven and hell, and all sort of doctrines that do not conform with what actually happens. So, we're in a very deep transition now, I think, from an exopolitical point of view. Mm-hmm. Because the scientific discoveries that we're making may present, in my opinion, my humble opinion, very real choices to people. Do they want to commit themselves to a positive timeline that goes to a certain altitude and frequency, even though it takes them beyond their comfort zone as to what they know to be true? Or do they want to commit themselves to a timeline which is based upon duality, which is not what the interdimensional portal at the core of our universe is broadcasting now through our galactic portals known as Unabku, which is the black hole at the center of our Milky Way galaxy, or what is coming through our solar system portal, which is the sun. We know now that the sun is the interdimensional portal into our solar system. And the reason we know that, you can go to exopolitics.com for backup on everything that I'm saying, and you'll see photographs of large interdimensional ships coming in through the sun. So we may be becoming to what I call an evolutionary plateau or an evolutionary cul-de-sac, mm-hmm. where Homo sapiens, we as Homo sapiens, were originally created as a very amazing being with 12 strands of DNA. If we look at our pineal gland, which is like right here in the center of our skull, that's almost like a processor that could carry all the signals for the 12-strand DNA. And because of past extraterrestrial interventions by the Anunnaki, not to get into that area, we're now been dumbed down to 2 strands. And we've been subject to interventions by negative entities, the Draco-reptilians, the Orion Greys, who entered into treaties with the Roosevelt administration in 1934, the Nazis in 1941, the abductions, all of these kind of negative consequences, which brought these kind of oppressive, ecocidal, genocidal regimes onto the planet. And the oppressive Orion-based monetary system, the debt-based monetary system that we're in, kind of all of these oppressive things, which is part of the catastrophic timeline. So that while people may have lulled because of gray extraterrestrial mind control, which is trauma-based mind control, into thinking that A, there are no extraterrestrials, and B, this is all academic, it really is about making fundamental choices as to whether we are going to opt into a positive timeline future, or we're going to opt into a catastrophic timeline. And there's no guarantees here. And these, I must say that these are kind of at the hypothetical level. These are hypotheses. But if people want to know more, you can go to exopolitics.com. And I have there all of the articles and the evidence that are leading, that show the decisions that we as basic human souls in these timelines are facing now. So this is why this is very, very real stuff. Now, on the positive side of things, I think that you and I are inhabiting the positive timeline now.
Yes.
And we are witnessing miracles like the reestablishing and the reuniting of the human family of Mars and Earth, and the invention of technologies like teleportation that will make Earth a paradise on Earth, that will eliminate all the pollution from fossil fuels and all the automobile, all the land use that now you have in the urban land use, highways, overpasses, and train yards destroy the urban ecology and the human-based cities. You can go to the literature of Jane Jacobs that can tell you that. So if we move to a teleportation-based society, we get rid of automobiles, buses, trains, planes for transportation. We get rid of highways, which are ruining the ecology. And we can go, say, to the New York teleport and get off at the other end at the Paris teleport in seconds. We are really living in a paradise planet, which is what the planet is like. And as Andy Bashago revealed here at this conference, he's part of his job in Project Pegasus was to go to the year 2045. And so they had reached in 2045, and we're in 2011 now, so that's just 34 years away. We have reached the teleportation society by then. So, and things are like really kind of beautiful and laid back, And so that's the kind of that's the positive timeline. So I think that what we experienced here this past week as Kona was the emergence of the major information and messengers of the positive timeline transformation that will take place on this planet over the next 34 years.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all this information. This is a lot of information to digest, even for me that was in the symposium, and look forward looking more into it. But I'm really excited about how, we're now becoming conscious that we live in a multiverse, and we're becoming conscious of our human potential. And there's so many things within our human bodies too that we're developing beyond just the technology that is absolutely fascinating and amazing. And these are incredible times to meet people like you and get informed and then feel in our heart what feels right and what feels true. This is your point of view. This is the point of view of Andy. There's a point of view of Lilou, and there's your point of view. And so all this is information, and then you choose. So I'm very grateful to be able to put this information out for everybody to hear. Thank you for stepping up and going beyond your Yale University's years and lawyer years to now be playing the role that you're playing in the world. So thank you. It's an honor to be spending this moment with you in Hawaii. And I have to thank you for being here, because you made the connection through Joanne Ocean. I'll be interviewing next too. And it was a pleasure meeting her as well. Thank you.
Yes, Lilou. Thank you. And thank you for being the cosmic being that you are.
Well, much love from Big Island. I love you. Bye-bye. Hello, my Juicy co-creators. Lilu here on Big Island in Hawaii on this Juicy Living tour, 12 months tour right now around the US, Canada. But today we're in Hawaii, in beautiful, sunny, gorgeous, luxurious Hawaii. How beautiful is that? I'm here with Alfred, by the way, Alfred Webre. For those of you that don't know Alfred yet, we have already done an interview back in Vancouver at the beginning of the Juicy tour, and now we're meeting here for this dolphin and teletransportation conference. It's so good to see you.
Thank you.
In this exotic place.
That's right. We're kind of in the middle of the Lemurian kind of existence in the last cycle here. And I mentioned that because one of the discoveries that I made here and contacts was with an apparently relations among intelligent civilizations in the multiverse, is that we live in a dimensional ecology. So that in this dimension, we're now in the time-space dimension in which the principal sort of determiners of the dimension that we're in are time and space. So we have height and width, and we also exist through time in kind of a linear way inside. But many people inside the dimension are starting to have more and more non-linear experiences, where they'll have dreams that they remember, and then the next day they'll bump into what they dreamt about, or they'll have a deja vu experience, or all sorts of things. Well, that's an indicator of what we call the dimensional ecology. In other words, that we live inside internested dimensions, and right now, pyramid from the Lemurian era, which has been discovered here on the Big Island, and which we'll be publishing over the next couple of weeks, and I'll be sending you all of the information. It's with in connection with a researcher here, but the beings that brought the pyramid to the attention of, and this is as big as the Bosnian pyramid. I mean, it's a very large pyramid from the probably from the prior to 9500 BC, the pre-solar system catastrophe, global pyramidal culture that we had here on Earth, which, as you know, because you were here at the symposium, and we from the Mars Anomaly Research Society, my colleague Andy Bashago and myself were able to show the visual proof of the pyramidal culture that existed with Earth and Mars as an interplanetary society prior to 9500 BC, about 11,500 years ago. Well, there were interdimensional extraterrestrial craft that were involved in leading this gentleman who's an advanced researcher here on the Big Island in Kona to the discovery of this pyramid, which is a huge pyramid hiding in plain sight. And it's right across from a portal on the ocean where the interdimensional craft come out and make their appearance. So that this is the sort of phenomenon that I described here at my presentation, which is a model that we've put forward in scientific terms, a hypothesis, but really it's becoming more and more of an experience, and that is the dimensional ecology of the multiverse. And that is that we have not only a natural ecology that we can describe here in Hawaii, it's part of the ecology. We see all the different flora and the different trees and flowers and the different insects and birds and animals. It's quite, because it's an island is uniquely different. We have the Galapagos Islands are just a little way down in the Pacific, and there's something unique here. Well, part of the search that we've taken in exopolitics, exopolitics being the science of